We're jumping around a little bit because we've got people here for various things. Let's now move to item 25, which is the Christchurch Economic Development Strategy, and we've got Tom Hooper here for that. Does somebody want to bring Tom in? Thank you. So item 25, the Christchurch Economic Development Strategy. Tom, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Welcome. And we've just moved on to item 25, which is the Christchurch Economic Development Strategy. Were there any opening remarks that you wanted to make around this paper?
First of all, I'd like to just thank everybody that's been involved in the development of the strategy. Been a really wide range of stakeholders engaged. This really represents a little bit of a platform for Christchurch NZ to really hit the ground running around some economic development opportunities. And just to make the point, as we discussed in the workshop, that there will be a further refinement of this document within the next 12 months, in particular working with Council around its LTP and the priorities that emerge, and a number of areas where we'll look to refine it further.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Tom? Dion.
So what's the first things that are going to come out of this?
Probably the Christchurch story, Dion.
Great.
So the narrative for the city, and really focusing on that positive messaging and attraction for the city.
Because I just want to say, I learned a really good saying at the local government conference: less hooey, more doey. And I want to see us actually doing some things that I think come out of this. So it's good to see the Christchurch story. So maybe we can get a briefing update about that at some stage.
Yeah.
What changes have been made based on the feedback that councillors gave at the workshop?
So the paper was adjusted to reflect, in particular, the desire to incorporate the change thinking around water. So in the next 12 months, in terms of the review, in particular, there'll be recognition of the changing, if you like, the changing space in water. No, it's part of the review.
So recommendation 2 up there notes that as part of the review that it will specifically consider the emerging issue, the first of which Tom has touched on, which is the effective stewardship of water as a resource, and the second is the better targeting of groups of citizens which are not in education, employment or training.
But on internships actually in it.
It's in it,
yeah.
Yes.
But it's not specifically related to not in employment, education or training.
They're not. It's not capitalised as what's otherwise known as the specific NEAT acronym, but we're talking about those general focus. So there is a project in the plan that addresses those issues, as there are projects in the plan that address the effective stewardship of water as well.
Thank you. Any further questions? Pauline.
Yeah, I think it's come up. It came up several times in the workshops that we weren't. I didn't think there was an appetite on page 517 to support the implementation of new irrigation schemes. And so I'm wondering why it's actually still in there, because I think the rest of it would stand up all right by itself if it just reads support and improve the efficiency of existing irrigation schemes to effectively and sustainably use the region's water resource. Is it up to us?
So whereabouts are you referring to?
In the actual document itself. Oh, so it'd be page 19, realising our potential. Realising the potential of Canterbury's rural economy.
And you're talking about the third paragraph that says support the implementation of new and improve the efficiency of existing irrigation schemes to effectively sustainably use the region's water resource.
Yes, so it's the first line, support the implementation of new.
I think, look, the key word in that is sustainably. So it's about the sustainable use of the resource.
Does it really have to be in there? Okay, well, I'd like to move that line, that paragraph be changed to support and improve the efficiency of existing irrigation schemes, etc. So to remove the implementation of new out of that line.
So you're happy, Pauline, to move the motion that's in front of us, but with an additional item 5, which proposes that change?
Yes. That would be fine, yeah. Start
all right, so do you want to come up with some wording then for a recommendation for line 5?
It's just taking out the first 5 words of that line, or 6 words.
All right, so if you can come up with something that can form part of this resolution that then you're happy to move,
okay,
that would be great. We'll continue on with questions in the meantime, and then when we come to moving, we'll take you as the mover of that amended resolution, and we'll go from there. Okay, so back to you, Yanni. Sorry, I didn't realise you had further questions.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was exactly on this one. So the priority is maximising the value of land-based production. I think that needs to be changed to actually minimising and mitigating the environmental harm of the land use production, and also actually, I mean, a kind of key point that's not really captured in here is our environmental well-being. I think has a direct correlation to our economic well-being, but it really seems still that this is really much focused on a lot of old-fashioned thinking about, you know, having big super anchor projects, for example, like convention centres that are massive. It's focused on a lot of things that are just kind of, I guess, business as usual in terms of an old way of thinking about where the world's going, and particularly around not a very clear priority of the environment being the sort of utmost importance. So, I mean, I'm just kind of wondering, like, how do we change that emphasis, given that we did have in the previous economic strategy a section around minimising the environmental damage from land use, but clearly that hasn't happened, and what we've seen is a proliferation of risk and degradation to the environment. So, yeah, and I'm really unhappy about the Christchurch City Council having to assist the rural economy for the new farm practices. I mean, so I just wanted some advice around that whole section around how we can make it more environmentally focused and remove the priority of supporting the increased value of land-based production.
I'll let Tom address the specific question, but maybe it's just useful to provide some background context for why the document is what it is. So in 2013, the Christchurch Economic Development Strategy was launched. This is a significant refresh and renewal to reflect a 2017 Christchurch Economic Development Strategy. This has been 12 months in the making, has had exhaustive consultation across business, public and private sector and communities. There have been breakfasts, there have been focus groups focused on the themes. Hundreds of people have inputted into the strategy as it currently sits. There's widespread support for the strategy from almost all sectors of the community, including the majority of the projects within the strategy. So the strategy is made up of both the big game changers and then also about 80 individual projects. The engagement has been led, I think, in an exemplary fashion by CDC and now Christchurch New Zealand. It has been through the executive at CDC, it's been approved by the board of CDC, it's been submitted through the Council Strategic Capability Committee, and we've also received an informal briefing from Tom and the team on the development of it. The council approval, as is your prerogative, is the final step in this process. What we've tried to do as these questions have arisen through that process is include as much as what we can in there. If at the final step there are fundamental differences and challenges, then the strategy as it's been developed, I think we run the risk of undoing the excellent work that has occurred in the engagement that's been successful across many sectors of the community with changes at a very late stage. That's not to say that Council, as the final approver, can't consider and debate changes, but I would just caution that the process has been robust and has been thorough and is well supported to reflect the content of the strategy as it is today. But having said that, I think it is appropriate to allow Tom a chance to address Yanni's particular question.
Thanks. Look, I would refer you to the very first sentence around maximising the value of land-based production, which is implement the Canterbury Water Management Strategy to effectively manage the region's water resource for economic, social and environmental benefit. And look, just as per the conversation in the workshop, this is not the document to address the approach to water. That is the Canterbury Water Management Strategy. This is looking at the economic development strategy that can help the city and the region to move forward. So trying to relitigate the how and where of the very complex nature of water in the region is not this strategy's purvey.
Thank you. Are there further questions? Yes. Glenn.
Thank you, Tom. My question's around a social dimension of the strategy. So just really high level and kind of as a highlight at the beginning on the cover, affordability over housing is held up at 440, I think it is. I know it looks good comparatively in relation to the rest of New Zealand, but with our housing policy, 360 is the figure that is deemed to be affordable, and if we'd had a go at the living wage, you know, even with that, according to our lower rents now, there's still a gap of $106. So, weekly, what I'm thinking is, with that along with our multicultural strategy that's been a highlight for the council this term, where do those land in this? Is there a chance for them to reach higher when we do number 2? Noting that livable city itself is a key part of the whole strategy, as you know, noted at the beginning.
So, look, yes, absolutely. It's actually a comparative advantage of Christchurch at the moment, in particular compared to Auckland and Wellington, that housing affordability is significantly better in this region than it is in others. And the other comment that I would make is that the quality of the housing stock is significantly better than other regions. I am not suggesting that we can't do better, but the relative position of housing affordability in the region is actually very strong, and that's nationally and internationally.
Well, yeah, okay. The others must be bad. Okay.
Thank you.
It's all right.
All right, now.
Can I just make a statement? The building code in New Zealand applies to Christchurch, Wellington and Auckland. The quality of the houses is determined by that building code. Unfortunately, it's abysmal, and it creates all sorts of problems. So I don't think it's fair to say that the quality of housing in Christchurch is better than anywhere else, because we've still got a building code which we tried to change in the district plan so that it was up to a 6-star equivalent in terms of warmth and dryness, which is a key predictor of kids' education and health outcomes. And the government has still not moved on it. So sadly, we still have a building code that is woeful.
So, except that there may well be improvements to the building code that can be made. The reason the building stock in Christchurch is significantly better than other cities is a percentage of it is far more modern. So the residential rebuild was built to modern building code standards rather than 1930s, 1950s. So the percentage of double glazed houses, the percentage of modern insulation is higher here than other places.
Yeah, and thanks for that further explanation. One further question, just looking at item 5 now in front of us, suggesting the amended wording. Obviously, just picking up on the comments that Brendan made earlier, this has been through a number of discussions, and here we are at the final approval stage, suggesting an amendment to the wording. It's not the first time that this matter has been discussed, but here it is landing requesting a change. Is that achievable, assuming that this passes 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, is that achievable at this stage in the game?
Look, Andrew, I think it is. Given that we've really clearly flagged we're going to talk about water more over the next 12 months anyway, and that will be a conversation to have back at council, I'm comfortable with us making that change at this late stage.
All right, that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Just
Vicky.
debate that. I don't think we've got a choice but to make that change. I think we have to look very, very clearly at our water resource and not squander it in the way that we have. And I think in terms of the quality of our water, we know that the Central Plains irrigation scheme would not now be approved. So we have a major issue with nitrates. We know that. We know that the problem does not occur for 10 to 30 years. So it's a long time in the making, and that we are still dealing with the impact of pre-major intensification of the dairying industry in Canterbury. So there is no way that I want to see anything that's based on the rules that were around in 2013. We have to recognise that in the last 4 years we are all acutely aware of the potential damage we are doing to our water resource. So I'm totally in favour of Pauline's amendment.
So we've now clearly moved into debate, but we haven't got a mover and seconder yet. Pauline, you were happy to move with this amendment, weren't you?
Yep.
And Vicky, you'd indicated you were happy to second. Okay, so moved and seconded.
Take the comma out after existing there on the second to bottom line.
Take the comma out after existing. All right, yeah, improve the efficiency of existing irrigation schemes, no comma.
Someone's going to pick up the comma while Leanne's not here.
Great, thank you. All right, is there any further debate? Yanni.
Thank you. I won't be supporting this. I appreciate the work that's gone on. We've been told that there's been extensive consultation. There has been no public consultation on this as far as I can tell. I suspect it was, from the reading, it was stakeholder engagement, and that's fine to a point, but I still think as council, if we're signing off on this, we should know what people have said, and we don't, as far as I can tell, have a list of what in the report, who said what, and when you look at it, there's a number of projects that people are doing, and I have no surprise that a number of those people say that those are the best projects. Of course they would. But actually, when you think about what's happening in our city, there's some amazing impacts post-earthquake. We know the most disadvantaged communities have been hit the hardest, and yet there's nothing in the strategy that talks about addressing the growing inequity in our city and in our region. In fact, what it seems to do is enshrine the wealth in those that already have it. And things like irrigation, that was a key part of the previous economic strategy to minimise the environmental harm caused by the irrigation, and yet it was used to justify Central Plains getting central government funding to increase the environmental damage to our city and our region. So I won't be supporting this. I appreciate the work that's gone on. I still think this is an old-fashioned approach to economic well-being, which basically says if you grow GDP, everyone's better off, and it will trickle down and it will be good for all of us. There's been some amazing programs and interviews on Radio New Zealand recently around the issue of youth suicide and economic well-being. And I would encourage councillors to think about that, because what that research shows is that growing inequity and systems like free market, Rogernomics, have had a direct correlation on our youth suicide rates. And it's very, very interesting to hear the growing analysis of what leads to certain negative outcomes in our society. So I personally think that our economic strategy as a city should be based on the well-being of our environment first and foremost, the sustainability of everything that we do, and the localisation of delivery and support for people, alongside a recognition that a growing inequity should be proactively addressed. And unfortunately in this, all I can see is more business as usual, where the wealthier will continue to get even richer, while the people that have suffered the most will continue. I don't see any solution for them in what's been proposed here. So I appreciate the work that's gone on. My preference would have been that there was a public consultation and that we do publicly have a record of who's said what, so we know which groups have supported this and which groups haven't participated or have said maybe a contrary view. So I won't be supporting this today.
I will be supporting this from the basis that I think we need to start somewhere, and there's been a lot of talk about a lot of things over the last 6 years since the earthquake, and we actually just need to get on and do something. Now, I've been sort of around about the last couple of weeks talking to a lot of people about Christchurch and actually attracting talent here, and it's bloody hard. There's people out there that are going over to Auckland or going over to Queenstown or everywhere else because they can earn more money. And we actually start needing to attract talent here, retaining talent here, so that we can actually start to really address some of those other issues around social inequality and all those kind of things. But if we don't have the right people here, we aren't going to get the right things going on. And this goes a long way to actually starting to work that thing. But I really want, out of this, to start us having a conversation about the vision for Christchurch. Why is Christchurch here? Who are we? And what are we doing into the future? And from the local government conference that I was just at, we are actually in a really good position for the unsexy stuff, the infrastructure. The country's going to have a time bomb of infrastructure problems coming up in the future, and we actually have a long way down the track address a lot of those issues that the other parts of the country don't. So how do we sell that story for the unsexy stuff and actually say Christchurch is an affordable place, it's a good place to be, there's a lot of cool stuff going to happen, but it does look a bit messy, and we do need to tidy up the city a little bit. But this is actually a good start. But I do want to start seeing that story coming out from this, and I really want to challenge the new organisation to actually just get on and start. Less talking about it and more doing it, less hooey, more doing. But that retention of talent, I think, is really important, and I want us to also sort of look at this and actually start thinking about how do we do that, because if we don't do that, Christchurch won't succeed into the future, and we have to start somewhere, and this is a good plan to do that.
Thank you. Dave.
Thank you. Look, I'll support the motion. Sorry, Vicky, the bubbles burst a bit. I don't know about number 5, though. The thing that worries me is, this document's been prepared over a long period, as Brendan Anstis elucidated just a short while ago. It has involved a huge amount of discussions with a whole lot of sector groups around the country, and it does worry me at times that we seem to bash the rural sector, and they're the source of all evil. Yes, there have been some...
let's let the debate continue.
That's all right. So I would really ask, are we going to put those together, or are we prepared to put item 5 separately?
If you'd like me to put item 5 separately, I will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Glenn.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to support it, particularly on the grounds that it is a reiterative process as per number 2. So I would like to see a stronger emphasis on the social determinants coming through, out of which housing is a part. I think housing is one of those things that we could have a tendency to undersell. So I would have liked us today to have been able to say we are a council that employs staff on a living wage, and that we promote housing affordability. So we'll just have to wait, hopefully, a week for that. But house prices might look better here, but they are still very challenging. So we might look better compared to the rest of the country. If they're challenging for us, I think that tells you how immensely difficult it is for the rest of New Zealand. But I'm particularly concerned that we actually do promote and celebrate that social dimension, our housing, our multiculturalness, because that in itself is a statement too of our diversity and who we are. I will support it. I'm happy to see that with number 2 we have a chance to keep fine-tuning it, and look forward to that coming through.
Thank you. Sarah.
Thank you. I'd just like to touch on a couple of points that people have made already. I'd like to disagree with Dion on his statement about attracting and retaining talent. If you listen to the enormous range of accents from young people around Christchurch at the moment. You'll know that we have been attracting talent from overseas because they're coming here for something different, something new, something innovative, and they can see the potential in us doing that here in Christchurch. That's what's been plugged overseas, and that's what's bringing people here. I know there are many young people in Christchurch looking at going overseas, but we always have. I did. And what we need to do is make sure that we rebuild them a city that they want to come back to and raise their kids here. We're a small country, people do their OE, they head overseas, they go to big cities, they come back, and that's just what we've always done in New Zealand. Just because people are choosing to go overseas doesn't necessarily mean that we're doing things wrong here, because we're attracting a huge number of people from overseas already. I do agree with Yanni. I'd like this to see wider consultation, and I think that we do need to be doing things a bit differently. It's been shown in all manner of different ways now in research and things that the trickle-down effect doesn't work, and just raising GDP does not make us a more equitable society. And if we're looking at social enterprise and doing things differently and making a happier, more prosperous city, we actually do need to be doing it in a different way, 21st century city way, not a 20th century city way. So I'll be voting against this today.
Thank you. Pauline.
Very quickly, look, yeah, I'm really happy to see that the number 2 and the little bit about the stewardship of water as a resource has been highlighted in there to move to the top. I think that's one of our key priorities at council, and I think there's ways, and I do not want to buy into the rural-urban argument about water. We all have to conserve water, and we all have to do more with less water. Okay, so we can do things with no chemicals, which would actually help too. So if we adopted organic practices citywide, that would give us a huge benefit. So this actually opens the door to all sorts of possibilities like that to go forward. So I'm really supportive of this document. I know there's a lot of work gone into it, but we can actually use this as an umbrella for all our other council priorities, which are becoming greener by the day. So thank you for all the work on this.
Thank you. I'm also supportive of this. A huge amount of work has gone into it, and I think the combination of point 2 in our resolution and the fact that we now have the new converged organisation, which is Christchurch NZ, presents a huge opportunity to further progress this piece of work. And it's good that we've had the opportunity, both at this meeting and at previous workshops and forums and so on, to have the ability to talk about what's important for council to be built into that update and refresh that we know is coming up. So I'm certainly very happy to see this approved today. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you. Oh, sorry, and I was going to put 5 separately, wasn't I? And I didn't. Dave, did you indicate that you were going to vote against 5? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so if we can note Davies' vote against 5 in particular. Were there others that wanted to vote against 5? Sarah, oh, so you're voting it. So people voted against the whole thing. Sarah, you voted against the whole lot, didn't you? And Yanni voted against the whole lot as well. Okay, and Dave in favour, but against 5. Great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.